Guys, I told you I was going to get better at live scope fishing, and I'm going to take you guys on the trip with me. And to do that, I'm going to spend some time with some guys that are spending a lot of time in a boat doing it, and one of which is my friend Brian Branum. You guys have seen Brian on the channel before. This is going to be a multi-part series, and you'll see why when you watch this first little bit. So let's jump right in with Brian explaining kind of what we're doing. And I think this is going to be a really fascinating series for you guys over the next couple of weeks. Here we go. Oh, where is he?
It's down there on top of those stumps. Oh, here, I'll show it to you. There's a fish right on it on the bottom. Two of them.
Is that him right there?
Yeah.
So what Brian said is, so we're basically,
okay, hold on just a second.
we're right on a river swing.
Yep.
On the corner. He's got stumps down there. And the comment he made, talk about seeing and not seeing fish, Brian.
Well, you know, I've heard a lot of people come up throw the fish over 50 feet away. One of the things you learn first is that you got to be able to cast on. You need to be able to throw it 50 feet when you want to throw it 50 feet. We're at a stump that's way down there. Before you take off to do this, you know, in general, because if you don't, you're just going to spend your time trying to get your bait on the fish while you're out here. You need to do that at home.
Guys, I know we had a little bit of bad audio there, but what Brian was saying was, before you come out and do this, one of the things you have to have a complete confidence in is how far 30 feet, 50 feet, 70 feet is when you cast your bait. And he said do it at home. I will tell you through the day, and of course I've been doing this for a while, but I really think if you came out and just spent the day, you kind of figure out. For me, just a little underhanded flip is 40, 45 feet. I think you can get a pretty good sense pretty quickly of how long a pitch that is. So, but that was that little bit about audio there. He's saying that's one of the things when you get out here to save yourself time, know how far your pitches are. And by the way, also one of the things that we did not talk about on camera, I asked him why a spinning rod, and he makes a great point that it's really important that when you make that pitch, your bait falls straight down, and that's really hard to do with a bait caster because you got to be pulling line as quick as your bait's falling. So that's why he and a lot of these guys, matter of fact, almost all of these LiveScope guys have gone to spinning rods because they can just flip a bait out there at the distance they know where it is. They see it hit the water, they open the bail, and they just can kind of throw slack line to it, and that bait will fall basically straight down. So that's a little bit of additional information there, guys. You see his bait splash, and there it comes down.
Okay. And that fish moved into those shad, and believe it or not, okay, there's some small ones on the bottom. I'll pull it down. There's that little bitty jig sinking with, it's driving those shad down. It's got them mad because it's in their way. These are probably Kentuckies right here if they're not gas for goo, but I think they're Kentucky. You see the jig. And I've learned a lot of things about this stuff, and one of the things is that's helped me the most, I've got to see the screen, yeah, is that, you know, here comes a fish right when I picked it up. You gotta do it enough to have comments. There's several fish way up in the water table right here. There's one at 30, just right here. Sometimes that noise on the surface of the water helps. It just makes a fish come at it. And it's different every day the way they act to me. I mean, some days are different. This is just scattered shad, and it's typical of what we've seen lately. Later in the day, this changes and the fish move up closer to the scattered bait and so forth. And what you're looking for, or what I'm looking for, is fish that are in the top of the water column. Like there's one out there at 70 feet, but he's not really positioned, in my opinion, to feed. He might be in a different part of the lake or something like that, but there's my bait. 55 feet away, little bitty jig, little bitty, 2-inch long lure, Hopping up there, right there. Now it's coming near some kind of fish. I think those are probably Kentuckies. One hit it, might have been a drum, but you don't know until you either catch one or don't. Unless it's a real familiar sight of some type that you've seen enough and you just know what it is. I mean, big old clumps of drum or sand bass, I mean, you just don't see that many bass that are all 50 of them or something. So, you know, don't fool yourself. And when fish are way down in the water table like that, they're typically not what I'm looking for. I want to find fish that are up high in that water table, and sometimes you got to look for them. They're not just everywhere. And as I'm running along, I'm going off and on. The map is critical. It's right below the scope. You're not seeing the map, but the map is showing the area, and these bigger fish will suspend near where they live. They may suspend a long way from where they live. I've caught them right out in the middle of the river in 60 foot of water under shad many times, but if you want to increase your odds, you stay around the structure that generally they live in. And okay, hold on a sec. Here comes one right now, real close to where I'm at right there. That fish was on that bunch of stumps, and it's not out of the question for him to move 6, 8, 10 feet to eat this little bitty bait. Believe it or not,
show him the bait you're using. Guys, a cutaway. This is the bait he's going to show you in a second, but I'm cutting away because I wanted to add what he said that I thought I had it on camera, but he didn't say it on camera. Was he catches a lot of fish on those spider stumps. So again, kind of a stump with exposed roots up off the bottom. He catches a lot of fish that he doesn't see the fish on that stump until the fish actually comes off the stump and bites the bait. So that's what he was saying. They'll get so tight, so I think probably even up under those stumps sometimes, that even if he doesn't see a fish there, if he sees a spider stump, he's going to throw on it. So I just want to make sure you guys heard that from me, even though I don't think I captured it on video from Brian.
it's a 6 cents, 2.7 divine swim bait.
And what's your leader?
And the leader is 12-pound Seagar Invisix, and I use a little loop knot on there to give it the most action. Of course, that's a tungsten head. Okay,
now you say
here's a fish.
Wait. So you said of course. Why of course?
What do you mean?
Tungsten.
Okay, look. Tungsten is you gotta understand a few things about tungsten. For one, it's the most dense element naturally occurring in the world. It's 19.3 grams per cubic centimeter. What that means is, for those of you old enough to remember what a sugar cube is, a sugar cube would weigh 19 grams, you know, 3/4 ounce or something. Now, if it was a sugar cube of lead, it would weigh 11.3 or 4 grams.
Okay, another cutaway. And it's hard for me to put this on the screen, but there's a great singer-songwriter named Todd Snyder, and he has a song called Statistician's Blues. And he says in it that 80% of all statistics are made up on the spot. It's a great song. If you've never heard it, go listen to it. I'll put a link at the end of this to it. But actually, I put a link right there to it. Anyway, Brian is a Texas A&M educated engineer. So he is a very, very smart dude. And part of why I enjoy fishing with him so much and doing these interviews with him is because he is so cerebral in his fishing, what all he thinks about and how he considers things. And I've learned a lot over the years from him, and I think that's probably why Driscoll enjoys fishing with him. He really puts a lot of thought into stuff from a very well-educated, very sharp mind. So he ain't making this stuff up, as you can tell.
So you got 19 versus 11 for the same size thing. So the tungsten's smaller. So by being smaller, it's going to fall even if it's the same weight.
So wait, you just said
Okay,
sugar,
I'm
but a
sorry.
sugar cube would be, if it was tungsten, would be 19
A
grams.
cubic centimeter. Is
Yeah.
what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And you can see that little bait right there. Now I believe there's a fish in that bunch of stuff simply because of where it is on this drop, not for any other reason. Now, if there is, he didn't come out of there at that time.
And what Brian said earlier was, when he sees a stump like that,
On a drop.
he may not see a fish there.
Look where it is.
Yeah. He may not see a fish there.
There's one right there. He came out.
Yeah, but
Now,
he'll throw on them because sometimes those big fish are so tight to the stump or the bottom, he doesn't see them till they react to the
You'll
bait.
see them today if we hang in there long enough. I mean, this can be real boring for some people, but it's extremely exciting to me. It's given me somewhat of a rebirth in fishing. I just absolutely love this. There's a fish or two on the stump. After you've looked at this for a while, you can see behind here some fish on the bottom. They may be Gaspergoo, and they do look like it, but they're in a very, very, very typical bass area. If you notice that landed right on it. You see how it landed right on that stump? Okay, now when it's going down there, I'm going to stop it so it doesn't get hung on that stump. I can fish this lure for days sometimes without ever changing it. People say, man, if I throw that jig head down there in that standing timber, I'm going to be tying them on all day buying these tungsten heads left and right. It's just simply not true. There's a fish on it right now, following it. See? Right below those shad, which makes my job of catching them a little bit easier. But what we really want is we want to find a fish up in here that's up in the water column, literally feeding, moving around, not sedentary on his stump. I mean, that's a good thing to do, is fish them on the stumps in between times. You certainly don't want to skip them, but it just takes a second to fish them, and if nothing comes out of there, chances are, you know, there's nothing there, because this is just a little minnow. Now we've got some shad coming up. Okay, this is a typical example. No, there's a brush pile here. Okay, this is brush. It's fairly new brush, it looks like. Positioning is everything doing this as well. I always say no cast before it's time. When you're doing this, you want to position your boat where you're throwing upwind, or you can't really control it and do everything you want to do, and have your bait control and all that. There goes the bait, headed for the top of the brush. Little old bitty tungsten jig at 60 feet is that bright. I'm jigging it along the top. Now, at least probably a crappie. Okay, there's a crappie came out of there. Okay, there's my jig head.
It's kind of like when I did the series with Albert Collins and Glenn Freeman. You just kind of got to pick a point to break. And I mean, I got a lot of really interesting footage. And you know, we just watched 12 minutes of footage with no fish catches, but I thought it was what Brian understands from spending, 100 days already this year on the water. We'll talk more about that as well. Is where those fish need to be, what they look like, and we're going to see all that through the course of this day of fishing together. So, and it also reminds me that, and the reason I picked right there to stop this was, Moonpie was driving a camera boat for the MLF series open at Rayburn this year, and that Friday morning, he and the camera guy were on Dakota. And he texted me and he said, Dakota's going to have a great big bag today. And I said, has he got him? And he goes, well, he said, he's got something, I think he said 22 or 23 pounds. He said, but he's following a couple of fish he thinks are 10 pounders. And I said, what do you mean he's following them? And he said, he won't throw on them until he gets the angle where he thinks he can catch them. He was stalking those fish. And as you can see right there, he figured it out that day, and he's figured it out. I mean, he's on the cover of this month's FLW magazine. The dude is absolutely slaying them, $300,000 of winnings this year. But I think if you'll stick with us here through the next couple, I've probably got 2 or 3 more videos with Brian. You're going to continue to learn stuff from a guy who's spending way more time than most of us gets the chance to be on the water, and who has a very keen mind and is very observant about what he sees. So stick around. Hope you enjoy this.